On to order this special meeting of the Berkeley City Council for today, Tuesday, September 12th, 2017. As we're calling the meeting to order, if people can please be quiet. We'll get to public comment soon. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Milo is absent. Davila. Bartlett is absent. Harrison is present. Hahn.
Present.
Wengraf. Worthington is absent. Drosty. And Mayor Arreguin.
Present. Quorum is present. As we start today's meeting on the proposal from the Berkeley Police Department, I want to first present a motion. I will read into the record, and the clerk will then pass out copies to the council and have copies available for the public. In response to concerns that have been expressed by members of the community and in consultation with the police department regarding their specific requests and the city attorney, I'm proposing the following motion, which is to reaffirm our existing prohibition on the use of pepper spray for crowd control and to further amend that policy as it relates to crowd control, expression of First Amendment speech, and addressing acts of violence by specific individuals within a crowd. And the motion, the specific language of the motion I'm putting forward that will be the City of Berkeley's policy if adopted this afternoon would be as follows. Pepper spray shall not be used as a crowd control technique to disperse a crowd or to move a crowd. Pepper spray shall not be used on persons engaged in legal speech or other expression that is protected by the First Amendment, nor upon those committing unlawful acts by nonviolent or passive resistant means. Example, sitting or lying down to block a street or doorway. Pepper spray may be used upon specific individuals within a crowd who are committing acts of violence upon the police or others. And so that's the motion that I'm going to be putting forward for consideration this afternoon. And the request the department has made is not to overturn the 20-year prohibition on the use of pepper spray for crowd control, meaning dispersing a crowd or moving a crowd, but rather to use pepper spray in a targeted way upon specific individuals that are engaging in violent acts against the police or against nonviolent demonstrators, as we have seen happen not just in the city of Berkeley recently, but in other communities. I feel that this is an important tool to give our police to defend free speech and to protect public safety. I'll now turn over the city manager to present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor and Council, given the protests that we've seen on February 1st, March 4th, April 15th, April 27th, and August 27th, there are a number of lessons that I believe we've learned. The city has continually refined its approach to managing these events to maintain public safety and focus on the individuals and groups committing violence. These events have posed a unique and emerging challenge that has been unprecedented in our Berkeley area. Police now are dealing with well-coordinated attacks armed by extremists in Berkeley. Violent individuals and/or groups have also demonstrated an interest and willingness to attack police officers and members of the public. The proposal before you this afternoon is to give Berkeley Police a tool that is an industry standard throughout the Bay Area and the nation. And I will now turn it over to the police chief, who has a presentation to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Manager, Mr. Mayor, and members of our council. I'm Andy Greenwood, the Chief of Police, and joining me this afternoon is Sergeant Spencer Fomby to my right and Lieutenant Dan Montgomery to my left. Thank you for calling this special meeting. The Berkeley Police Department is committed to protecting the Berkeley community and upholding First Amendment rights. Over this year, Berkeley has been the focus of an unprecedented effort to be made a battleground for extremist groups. We have seen a major increase in violence and criminal behavior by extremists, regardless of view, in our community and across the nation. Extremists who target First Amendment activities, the events that Berkeley Police Department is committed to protecting, are using new tactics, new weapons, and a higher level of coordination than we've seen in the past. We face a number of potential demonstrations in Berkeley in the very short term. This Thursday night, and again 10 days later, potentially 4 days of disturbances. Hence the urgency in coming to you this afternoon with this specific request. Though this request is one made of urgent necessity, it's important for you and our community to know that we are making it also out of an interest in transparency, that you see and understand the challenges our department, your department, faces, and that our community sees and understands those challenges that we face in managing these demonstrations and keeping our community safe. The background to this is well known. In Berkeley, on February 1st, April 15th, and August 27th, large coordinated groups of extremists took coordinated action and violently attacked people engaging in free speech activity, as well as police officers. These attacks resulted in significant injuries to both civilians and police officers. With a little more detail, on February 1st, a large group of over 100 masked extremists stormed the UC campus, attacked police with fireworks explosives, violently assaulted people in the area, vandalized and destroyed property in South Campus and downtown, set multiple fires, and threw a lit flare into a downtown bank in an apparent arson attempt. On April 15th, dozens of masked extremists entered Civic Center Park en masse during an otherwise peaceful event and ultimately attacked others in the park, as well as police officers, using a variety of weapons, including chemical irritant sprays, explosive quarter sticks of dynamite known as M80s, and in this photograph you can see an M80 detonating on our police line. These are Berkeley police officers facing the brunt of that explosion right in front of them. They also used sticks, bats, bike locks, and wooden shields. We recovered an improvised explosive device also in the park, an improvised smoke bomb in the park. So this is a photo showing the explosive detonation right literally on our officers. On August 27th, just a couple weeks ago, hundreds of masked extremists arrived on the scene of an otherwise peaceful event, which had many more peaceful demonstrators. This event was across from Civic Center Park. These extremists were accompanied by a flatbed truck loaded with weapons and shields.
Please.
The photograph
Please
of
have
this,
order as we proceed with the meeting. Public comment will be after the presentation. Please.
This photograph taken that day shows shields loaded on the truck, which were subsequently offloaded to masked extremists. They deploy them out in line. Here's one of dozens of those shields, and there's one right in front of you here on the floor. The shield right here is the exact, from the batch that came off of the truck. It is a sign on the front, but it is made of plywood, and on the back has rope handles, foam padding added to it, so it functions as a shield. From that truck, the speaker prepared the crowd for violent confrontation, warning that anyone who is concerned about violence should move away. This masked group formed a line with their shields and without, seen here surrounding a person, ignited smoke bombs, and ultimately entered the park. They violently moved this person off their line before coming into the park. Members of the group with these shields attacked individuals in the park. In this photograph, you can see a shield being used offensively. In this photograph as well. It's important to note that extremists use chemical irritants as well against others at these demonstrations. Here, this is from August 27th, right across the street at Berkeley High.
That's a fascist.
Please, let's have order. Let's have order. We will get to public comment soon.
And here, pepper spray is being used on April 15th, again in front of Berkeley High School. We've now seen over and over that extremists are willing to bring weapons and shields to the fray and use them against those with whom they disagree. We, your police, are charged ultimately with preserving space so that the expression of First Amendment speech, peaceful or quiet or boisterous and loud, and above all nonviolent, can occur. With each event, we've refined our approach to crowd control with an eye towards both overall community safety and our ability to focus our efforts on arresting specific violent actors within a crowd, people who are committing violent acts upon others. And this challenge brings us here to you this afternoon. These items before you on the floor were gathered after the August 27th, and I think there's one item from April 15th, after the events in Civic Center Park. We've included photos of many of these in our report, but in the interest of a full understanding of the issues, we want you to be able to see for yourself the actual weapons that are being brought to the fray in these events so you can appreciate what our officers in our department are facing and our community. The police department is currently limited to using batons, less lethal projectiles, and smoke and tear gas to confront coordinated groups of extremists who have launched brutal and determined attacks against officers and people whom they have determined should not be allowed to speak or publicly assemble. Across the region and the country, the use of pepper spray in large handheld aerosol spray cans is an industry standard tool for the effective intervention in violent crowd control situations involving direct coordinated attacks on police lines. Today's reality, unfortunately, is that we're facing the prospect of meeting a large, armed, coordinated group who are prepared to use explosive shields, clubs, projectiles, and violent attack against police and those with whom they disagree. As it stands now, our officers do not have the tools they need to address this threat. The major gap in their tools has been brought into sharp relief over this year's demonstrations. Our officers carry batons. We have less lethal launchers, but the projectiles are ineffective against the shield, even a smaller shield like you see in front of you from August 27th. After that, we have to escalate to smoke canisters and tear gas canisters, where we risk the cross-contamination effect of a large release of chemical irritant in a broad area, rather than have the option to use a tool that allows us to use a direct amount and direction of force upon specific people. So we're seeking the ability to use pepper spray as an important, necessary, intermediary form of force, an alternative to tear gas and its broad cross-contamination, and an alternative to the blunt force of our baton strikes. Pepper spray is markedly more effective against those armed with shields, as shields do not give full protection against the effects of directed, focused application of pepper spray. Sergeant Spencer Fomby is one of our force experts and will walk us briefly through this equipment and give some background on its effectiveness in other agencies.
My name is Sergeant Spencer Fomby. I've been with Berkeley PD for 17 years. I've been a member of the Special Response Team for 13 years and have been team leader and lead instructor for the past 6 years. I have instructor certifications in 10 different use of force disciplines, including chemical agent instructor. Pepper spray is an industry standard tool that has been used by virtually every police agency in the United States. Currently, the only options that Berkeley PD has to manage a violent crowd are batons, less lethal projectiles, and tear gas. Use of batons requires officers to have direct physical contact with the crowd. Keeping distance from the crowd is safer for officers and the public. Use of pepper spray would allow officers to address violent members of the crowd without getting into prolonged hand-to-hand fights. We have studied the use of pepper spray by other agencies, including the Seattle Police Department. Seattle PD has developed policy and tactics for the use of pepper spray that have almost eliminated their use of tear gas. Their use of pepper spray has reduced use of physical force by officers and injuries to officers and the public. So these are examples of canisters that we use. So this is the type of canister that all police officers are issued and carry on their belts. All police officers are exposed to pepper spray in the academy and after. It's kind of a routine training that we go through. And this is a handheld canister basically containing the same pepper spray in just a larger canister that's used in violent crowd events.
So when used appropriately, pepper spray in this context has proven to have immediate effects, including cessation of attack and creation of space between police and violent individuals, and it gives opportunities to carry out focused arrest efforts on violent offenders. Our item here before you today asks that you modify your policy with respect to the use of pepper spray in specific circumstances when dealing specifically with violent activity in a crowd situation to allow us the use of this tool. We remain absolutely committed to the rule that pepper spray never be directed at those who are engaged in free speech or upon those who are protesting unlawfully, but who are doing so with passive resistance. That is an absolute commitment. Given the change in council policy, we would amend our policy as outlined in our report with some slight tweaks that would need to be added to our First Amendment assembly policy, and those will reflect the council's overall policy aims as we understand them in the motion on the floor. It should also be noted that our use of force policies, of course, gets great attention from members of our community. We want to note that the changes that we anticipate in our use of force policy do not conflict in any way with the portions of that policy which were in place as a result of a settlement earlier this year. So the additions or changes that we make to our use of force policy do not override or displace the aspects of our policy that are a result of the settlement from earlier this year. And I've received some questions from that from the community even leading up to this. And with that, we'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Greenwood. Thank you, members of the department. Thank you, Madam City Manager. We'll take questions after the public comment period. So let me just lay out the ground rules for public comment. Given the large number of people here that I assume wish to address the council regarding this issue, each speaker will have 1 minute to address the City Council. However, time can be yielded for a maximum of 4 minutes per person. So if 3 other people in the crowd yield you a minute, you get 4 minutes. Let's be respectful of each other and the different viewpoints that will be expressed this afternoon, as well as respectful of the council and staff. We do have rules of decorum that are posted throughout the council chamber and outside. We ask that you abide by those rules of decorum. Let's have a civil discussion this afternoon, and we welcome your input on this important issue. So if the first speaker can please come forward, you'll have 1 minute to address the City Council. Or time can be yielded.
No, she's gone.
Time?
Yes.
I'm a longtime member and resident of the Berkeley community. I'm also a graduate of UC Berkeley, and I'm also a parent of a child in the Berkeley schools. I think that the mic just went out.
Can you turn it off?
I have to say that this report is fiction. I was at the demonstration on the 27th. I was part of a coalition of tons of groups. They across the spectrum, and we all marched together. People dressed in T-shirts, people dressed in sandals, people dressed in black, people dressed in white, people dressed in rainbows, okay? And we all marched together, and we all stood together, shoulder to shoulder. And I have to tell you that I was terrified to come there, and that those people who are willing to put their bodies on the line, they made me feel safe. They made me feel like I could come. And to sit there and lie and say that they are the extremists when the Nazis are here in our community,
Next speaker,
they
please.
are the extremists. Shut them down. Make them leave our
Next
town.
speaker, please.
Thank you.
I want to cede my time to her.
Okay.
Me too.
Okay.
And me as well.
So the speaker has 4 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Sansara Taylor. I came out from New York City to be here today because what happens in Berkeley is setting a precedent for the whole country. And I want to say there's a lot of talk of extremists we just heard, but zero mention of the extremists in the White House who have sanctioned white supremacy, who are terrorizing our Muslim and immigrant communities and brothers and sisters, who want to send women back to the back alleys without abortion rights, who want to send LGBTQ people back into the closet, and who are terrorizing the world with the threat of nuclear weapons. And I want to say the fascists who have been coming to Berkeley, who are coming this Thursday, Ben Shapiro, after him, Milo, Steve Bannon, Ann Coulter, these people are targeting Berkeley because targeting Berkeley is part of reversing everything this city has stood for, the legacy of the 60s, the fight against white supremacy, the fight against the repression of LGBTQ people, the fight against unjust imperialist wars and aggression. And they're targeting Berkeley, and they are spewing, not free speech, not things that advance intellectual discourse and dialogue, nothing that deserves a platform in Berkeley on any campus. White supremacy should be a closed issue. It doesn't advance discourse, any more than giving a platform to flat earthers or creationists advances scientific discourse. These should be settled questions. And the fact that you use the cover of free speech, that the chancellor, Christ, that the mayor here, that the city council is entertaining more police powers, what's actually happening is fascists' right to spew toxic white supremacy, to normalize fascism and misogyny, is being protected in the name of free speech. It's being protected by a police state perimeter on Berkeley campus. unprecedented suppression, including a lockdown of Sproul Plaza, the center and the home of the free speech movement, which was a movement that stood up against white supremacy, that demanded the rights of students and others to fight against institutional racism, not the right of fascists and racists to come and spew their poison and have it normalized. And to use the cover of free speech, it's Orwellian, to say that you're going to give more powers to the police, to terrorize and intimidate. We all remember the pictures of UC Davis students sitting peacefully with that officer with his pepper spray going down the line and targeting those students. We all saw those pictures. The whole world saw those pictures. We all saw the Berkeley police harass and rob a hot dog vendor the other day. Don't tell me they're going to come here and protect our rights. You do. Look, the First Amendment demands what you're actually doing is suppressing the rights of the protests. You're suppressing our right to speak, our right to assemble, our right to protest, our right to do this without fear of government repression and violence. And it's illegitimate. It's illegitimate. The city council, where you guys need to be, is with us. At the Speak Out, we're planning refusefascism.org, a nonviolent mass speak out against white supremacy, misogyny, xenophobia, and fascism at the same time as Ben Shapiro. We're doing it to speak out against what he represents as the leading edge of a whole fascist assault on Berkeley and on the whole country and on people around the world. And you should be out there standing up with us, not sanctioning more police state. And you should be helping deny a platform. And the last thing I want to say, you act like you're afraid of the protesters. Really, you're afraid of Trump. And I understand. He's tweeting. He's threatening Berkeley. He's saying he's going to defund the school. And so you are collaborating. You're collaborating with the fascists in creating a police state repression. That is unacceptable. There is no place for collaboration. In the name of humanity, we must refuse to accept a fascist America. We need to stand up and say no.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, please.
Yeah, my name is Phil Dominic, and I don't disagree with these officers here about the pepper spray. I was a Marine for 11 years, and we shot bullets, not pepper spray. I do want to say that my son was arrested in this last demonstration because he handed somebody a mask. Now he has a police record. He came here with bandages, tape, peroxide, rubber gloves, mask, and free water to pass out to either side. He came to help. He spent 3 days in jail. Now he has a police record. And I think the city council here and the mayor should make that right and get that expunged. You know, he didn't come here with any violence. He wasn't dressed in black. He wasn't throwing rocks. And, I'd rather get shot in the face with some pepper spray than a bullet. And that's just what I like to say.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name's Karen Ashley, and I work with Showing Up for Racial Justice. We're the group who initially called for this demonstration last month. I would like to say that the portrayal of the demonstration is unbelievably false. My daughter came. My daughter came with 3 friends who had never been to a demonstration, and when they saw the news the next day, they said, my God, that has nothing to do with what we experienced. So understand that. Really look at that. I also want to say that I am so furious with the presentation, with the criminalization, with the complete attempt to isolate the Antifa folks, and there's no talk of the white supremacists. This city would not need pepper spray if there were no white supremacists allowed.
Next speaker, please. Please, as people are speaking, let's be quiet. Let them have the floor. Next speaker, please.
These comments were prepared before the alternative proposal to the City Council was put on the table. I am speaking on behalf of the Coordinating Committee of the Wellstone Democratic Renewal Club. The Wellstone Club opposes authorizing the Berkeley Police Department to use pepper spray for crowd control. The use of pepper spray for crowd control, not allowed in Berkeley since 1997, sets the stage for violence, creates panic, and increases the likelihood of injury to those who are engaged in peaceful assembly and protest. Ironically, authorizing the use of pepper spray privileges those who come to demonstrations in order to commit acts of violence, telling them that they should bring gas masks along with their sticks, shields, and hammers.
Oh, I think your time is up, Jack, but if anyone wants to yield a minute.
Okay, you have my statement.
Oh, there's a minute, Jack. There's a minute yield in the back. So.
Thank you. Go ahead.
No, you can raise your hand, and I will see you. So.
Berkeley is now considering the relationship.
Please.
Berkeley is
have order.
Berkeley is now considering the relationship of our police force to the Urban Shield program. The Wellstone Club appreciates the approach proposed by Council Member Bartlett, orienting the Berkeley Police Department to, quote, envision an alternative training protocol that reflects our community values. Authorizing pepper spray for crowd control drives the Berkeley Police Department in an opposite direction into the militarized Urban Shield framework. We oppose that direction. Violence and incitement to violence, no matter what its source or declared motivation, have no place in Berkeley. Street fights create chaos and uncertainty and drive civil society to the right. One more sentence.
Sure, yes.
Those of us who lived through the events of the 60s and 70s remember how secret intelligence operations like COINTELPRO flourished in an atmosphere of chaos.
Thank you.
Have my entire statement.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello. I'm a longtime resident in District 7, and I actually am for the motion on the floor. Thank you very much. I support it because I believe that the police need a measure on how to deal with these types of situations. Right now, they have indicated to you that they use batons. Batons hurt. Pepper spray would be better. Who wants tear gas?
Please, have order.
I think we need to support the police department, and it is in the best interest of our community and our police and those who are disobeying the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Pamela Drake, and I live in Oakland, and I'm here because we may set a bad precedent for progressive politics all across the country with what we do today. I want us to think first channel Model Chirac before we do anything else, okay? And I would like to say that I feel that the new proposal is a step in the right direction. But here's the bottom line. There's a lot of people in this community, and every community, but really in Berkeley more than people know, who do not trust your average police officer to follow those kind of rules once they get an extra tool. Police have all the tools they need. If they need more tools, you have to use the democratic process and go through your police commission review board, and you have to go through and talk to the community. There's no reason to rush any of these decisions and to make major changes. Councilman candidate Aragin came to a press conference that we called to get the police commission on the ballot in Oakland, and we would like to see him do the same in Berkeley. We need a police commission that has power and can make a difference, and you need to go through that process.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I have minutes from
Tree Fitzpatrick,
Okay.
Sula Culver, and Eric Dina.
Okay, 4 minutes.
Why is the city manager and the police chief using another shock doctrine city council? Oh, by the way, my name is Dr. James McFadden. I work at UC Berkeley, and I'm a Berkeley citizen. Why is the police chief and the city manager using another shock doctrine city council meeting designed to minimize public participation? 3 o'clock in the afternoon, most people are working. Why are they using an emergency meeting to push another extraordinary police militarization ordinance change when coming alt-right events have been long planned? Pepper spray as a police crowd control technique was disavowed by previous city councils for good reasons. It's a pain compliance form of torture, used to coerce the public into obedience and ripe for police abuse. Norm Stamper, the former police chief of Seattle, said that the biggest mistake he ever made as chief was authorizing the use of tear gas on the protesters during the 1999 WTO meeting in Seattle. And tear gas is a mild in comparison to pepper spray. Stamper's action, which he now regrets, escalated the violence and turned a protest into a riot. Emergency ordinance appears to be just one more step in reinforcing the militarization of our police and their ability to escalate violence in order to save face. What step will be called for next month when the minor skirmishes continue to occur? Will they be asking for the active denial system, a heat ray developed by Raytheon, a directed microwave energy weapon used by the military for perimeter security and crowd control? It works by heating the surface of the public. Are you going to be cooking us next time? Because if that doesn't work. Or are they asking for permission to use tasers on the protesters who failed to disperse? Or what about attack dogs? In a recent Chronicle article, Lieutenant Paul Linsky from the Sheriff's Office said psychologically canines are a huge deterrent. The mere presence of a canine is worth a dozen officers, so no one wants to get bit by a German Shepherd. Or they ask for rubber bullets, or perhaps maybe they can change that order and get the tank with a gun turret, which they originally wanted. If the threats don't work, what escalation will the police be allowed to use to cow the public during protests in order to save face? Make no mistake about it, this is about police impunity to enforce state control of the public space. We should be asking whether the police surge, which we saw on August 27th, was effective. What I personally saw at both the Oxford Crescent and Civic Park was an expensive constructed and elaborate keep-off-the-grass fortress manned by dozens of police, a totally ineffective overreaction to a peaceful counter-protest. Even if you give the police the benefit of the doubt that they had to prepare for the worst-case scenario, something they only do when an event is politicized, it was clear that by noon the number of alt-right attendees was tiny and the security would have been accomplished by a few dozen officers assigned to stand near them, something that actually worked earlier in the day when police completely pulled back after the gas mask fiasco. What we saw on August 27 was an escalation, a threat of violence by the police who put on gas masks and used tear gas canister guns to threaten peaceful counter-protests. Fortunately, the sun de-escalated the police, who were sweating in their masks and military garb, forcing them to withdraw before some of them succumbed to heat stroke. But instead of guarding the few remaining alt-righters, they completely withdrew and allowed the few scuffles to take place. The scuffles were sensationalized by the media, which we should take note that the number of scuffles and injuries was no higher than you'd normally see at a Raiders game. Instead of portraying the events of that day as they occurred, a peaceful counter-protest, the corporate media sensationalized the few scuffles, if it bleeds, it leads. Would it have been better had the police pepper sprayed the young black-clad protesters? How would that escalation have turned out? If we use Seattle as an example, the answer is that it would have turned the peaceful protest into a riot. I'll say again, this appears to be about loss of face by police, who thankfully were forced to back down from escalation on August 27. The police now want a tool to escalate rather than back down, and give them escalation options is a really bad idea. Please vote no.
Speaker, please. Please, let's have order. Let's let people continue with public comment. Mr. Sherman.
Quick comment. Not my purpose for speaking, but what I saw on this presentation and what I saw the way the media reported August 27th, I was there all day. It was two separate worlds, two separate realities, and it was totally not the demonstration that I saw. Secondly, my reason for being here. My name is Michael Sherman. I was chair of the Peace and Justice Commission in 1997, 98, 99, when the City Council tasked my commission, along with 8 other commissions, to look into the use of police use of pepper spray. We submitted a report to the City Council. That report, I guess, is still the policy that isn't active today. If I could say two things I would urge the City Council to do. One, read the report. Secondly, don't vote on anything today because the situation out there in the park is much more complicated, much more nuanced, much more complex than we ever were dealing with back in 1997, 8, and 9. We were talking like police versus a set of protesters.
Thank you.
Please, read the report. Don't take any action today. And if necessary, even go to the Police Review Commission. Let them look at it further, too. Thank you.
Sir, please, if we can just continue with the public comment. Thank you.
My name is Russell Bates, longtime resident of Berkeley. As fascist Americans seem to be enjoying more of a resurrection in this country these days, it seems like no reason for Berkeley to go along with that. It's ironic that the sign on there, the shield is being used as an example of bad Antifa. It says, to all those who fight fascism, you are not alone. That's supposed to make Antifa look bad, huh? How about the fascists that show up with their tear gas masks, their pistols by their sides, their billy clubs, and now they want another weapon like this? I mean, you got to be kidding me. There is something wrong when the City Council feels empowered to give the police even more power. It seems like power seeks more and more power and more corruption. And when is it going to stop? When is it going to stop? I ask this every single time. When is it going to stop?
Thank you.
My name is Ocean Newman, and I'm an attorney. I was on the Police Review Commission for 8 years. This is the last thing that the Crunch should be doing is giving the police a weapon, given what the real question is, what the hell were they doing at these protests? That's what should be examined. On April 15th, they simply disappeared and allowed the protests to go on and the violence go on for hours without a police officer there. Why was that? That's the question that should be answered. Why is it that when they were extremely aggressive against Black Lives Matter when they protested? Why is it that the Berkeley police are using force 6 times more regularly against African Americans than against other people? Those are the questions that should be answered. Why don't they have body cameras? That's the question that should be answered. Before those questions are answered, they shouldn't be getting any new weapons at all. Thank you.
My name is Terry Toplin. I'm a Civic Arts Commissioner and District 7 intern. I am speaking for myself. I really sympathize with everyone, council, staff, the chief, the cops, everyone. This stuff is tearing us apart. But I don't think that pepper spray is really the answer. We're approaching the 30th anniversary of the Peace and Justice Commission being formed, if I'm correct. This isn't right. There's weapons on the chamber floor. I think we need to de-escalate and we need more clarity. We're talking about the sticks. This is one of Chapman's things, the shield with the flag and the V. It's pretty obvious. Why weren't the Proud Boys in the report? Why weren't the Fraternal Order of All Knights in the report? If we are going to protect free speech and public safety, we have to really think about our own responsibility in de-escalating political violence, not just shifting it and intensifying it and concentrating it on people who are scary, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Margie Wilkinson. I'm speaking on behalf of Friends of Adeline, who wishes me to communicate to you that they are absolutely opposed to changing the rules around pepper spray. Some of us remember 1997, and wish that you would do other things. For example, the city should be organizing teach-ins and conversations between various aspects of the anti-fascist movement. The city should not be focusing on Antifa, but on the dangers of Nazis. Nazis kill people. The city should be having, there are tons of experts, all kinds of people who've written books. I've heard a bunch of them on KPFA over the last week who've written books about how you fight against fascism. That's what we should be talking about, not this. And on a personal note, I just want to say that I really love Berkeley because this meeting was announced last Friday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and look who came. Come on, do better.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council, City Manager, staff, and Chief. With all due respect, I disagree with this item. I am Moni Law, speaking in my own capacity at my lunch hour. I have 15 more minutes, 20 more minutes. I want to share with you that I am Law versus City of Berkeley, the lawsuit in which Chief referenced getting new policies and procedures on hand to reduce violence, to de-escalate the violence, to ensure that peaceful protests are protected. I was there on August 27th, and I actually returned early because I had a feeling it would be historic. None of it made the news. I'm writing a letter to Berkeley side to an op-ed piece to show what actually happened that day. This happened as well. None of us saw it. There were thousands of us in the street, peacefully protesting, singing, chanting. There were 3 big angels. I don't know how they missed us. The Interfaith Walk from First Congregational Church and all the others that were present. There are ways to handle this, and there are ways to do it without violence. What I spread around there is the Mother Jones article on pepper spray, and it's a very dangerous tool. It's more damaging than effective on the person that you're trying to target. And neo-Nazis and white supremacists are the ones who have threatened my family and myself. No one else.
My name is Marge Sussman. I'm a longtime Berkeley resident, District 4, and I am totally against this proposal to use pepper spray on crowds. Why do you need more and more weapons? Why are the police not being trained in effective de-escalation techniques? This is something they could be doing instead of going in the direction of violence against people expressing their opinions. I'm shocked at the presentation using the term extremist over and over and over again. It sounds like the 50s to me, and this is not, and no referral to the fascists, no referring to the fascists and the white supremacists. And the other last thing I want to say is there are many people with respiratory illnesses, and if you start pepper spraying into the crowd, those people are going to get really sick.
Hello, I'm John Kainer, CEO Downtown Berkeley Association, but I'm here speaking for myself. Our board has not had a chance to weigh in on this. I'm a 27-year resident of Berkeley. I've loved this city. I've served 10 years on the board of Berkeley Partners for Parks. I serve on the Public Schools Fund Board. I've worked in East and West Oakland running a housing nonprofit. I care desperately about progressive issues. We need prudent and reasonable measures, and these are prudent and reasonable measures. Other cities have done it. We are approaching on Thursday a very challenging situation with another nighttime protest. The last time on February 1st, there was $600,000 worth of damage and bodily injury. Please, 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 let's support our police in a very reasonable and prudent measure. I think our community, and I ask you all as council members to weigh what you think is the best judgment in doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a couple people are gonna.
Okay.
Would you be willing to see that minute for me, brother?
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay. All right, 4 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Andrea Pritchett. I'm with Berkeley Cop Watch, and I also serve on the Police Review Commission, although I am not representing them today. I wanted to, for those of you who were not on the commission in 1997, I want you to understand that there was a long and very deliberative process about whether or not to introduce pepper spray to the police department's arsenal, because there were deaths. There was approaching 100 deaths in 1997 that were related to pepper spray. Since that time, it's amazing how little research has been done. It's alarming, actually. But yes, literature that's out there says yes, it contributes to heart attacks. It can contribute to strokes. So what we're being told is that officers are going to use little individual canisters of pepper spray on particular individuals in these scenes. I hope you've really looked at how difficult that's going to be and not cross-contaminate. Matter of fact, ironically, the only person who ever pepper sprayed me was Kyle Chapman, the founder of the Fraternal Order of the Alt-Right. Yes, the Bay Stick Man who's got felonies against him. He's the guy. He wasn't trying. He wasn't trying to pepper spray me. He was trying to get somebody else. Oops. That's how easy it is. So you're going to put that in the hands of the police. I'm sorry, but I think that we have a political problem, we have a tactical problem, and it's far too easy to say that the problem is that they didn't have pepper spray. Let me tell you, there was plenty of pepper spray out there on the 27th. Plenty. Officers from other divisions, from I think it was Hayward, they had what looked like fire extinguisher-sized containers of pepper spray, the same kind that the famous UC Davis officer used to casually gas students sitting cross-legged on the floor. That was already out there. If that was going to be our savior, it would have been. Because the chief says other departments, when they come in here, they can use whatever they want to. Because apparently we're not in control of what other departments do. So I'm sorry, but I think that you're being told that this is the solution to our problem, and it's not. And, sadly, for all the concerns that are expressed about Antifa, let me tell you, Antifa is trying to fill in the need for public safety that they feel there is a void of. That's what's going on. And all this propaganda here, where are the alt-right? Where's the Bay Stickman's logo? Where are the swastikas? Where's the flags of all these other groups? It's not real. This is very staged, I have to say. I do want to say this also, that we have an accountability problem in terms of our ability to regulate the amount of force that the Berkeley Police Department uses. We are not able to monitor how much force is used at a protest. When they are deploying, we were told that after the Black Lives Matter protest that the use of tear gas would be closely monitored, that there would be an inventory. After police indiscriminately shot at people, indiscriminately gassed people, we were told there would be an inventory before and after. Will that information be produced? Has there been a serious evaluation of the Berkeley Police Department tactics that were used in all of these battles? Have you seen it? As a member of the Police Review Commission, I have not. And so I think it would behoove us all to ask the police department to produce the after-action reports, to evaluate what they already have done, and try to be strategic. I appreciate that the chief and others have said, we don't want to do mass gassings. We don't want to be indiscriminate. Let's stay with that. Let's not raise the level. Because once that pepper spray starts going, is it the police? Is it the alt-right? Who is it? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deborah Garcia. I'm a 22-year resident of Berkeley, California, District 8. Love this city. And I just heard about this at about 2:10 today, and this is the first time that I just, put the jeans on and rushed over because it was so important to me that you all do not allow police officers this particular tool. And I have to say that just because something is an industry standard does not make it right. I mean, chokeholds used to be an industry standard. So I think there needs to be, and I have to say that I do respect and appreciate the difficulty of the police officers who choose to be here to protect and serve our right to free speech. I do respect that it is a difficult situation for you. I have a great concern about how you're going to take this pepper spray. I mean, I'm a 57-year-old woman. I feel like I'm still young, but I'm a senior. I come with my friend's niece who's 9 years old. I mean, how the heck do you know that we're not going to get sprayed while you are allegedly spraying somebody who is doing something wrong? So just please, don't do this. Thanks.
Thank you.
I believe two people are going to cede a minute to me.
Okay.
Sarah Kirshner, resident of Berkeley. So I agree with Andrea that a police solution to a political problem is not a good one. And I feel like this policy and the other ordinances reflect a failure to make some crucial distinctions and then to equate things that are not equatable. So anti-fascists are not equatable with white supremacists and Nazis. As someone whose relatives survived the Nazi genocide and were part of armed resistance against Nazis, I do not believe that they are equatable to Nazis. The distinction that then isn't being made is the distinction between free speech that was intended to protect those who were fighting against white supremacy, sexism, and religious targeting, and what is not free speech, and not even just hate speech, but is a desire to mobilize people towards the annihilation of other people. History has repeatedly showed us that if you do not stand firm against paramilitary fascists, they increase their numbers. That was historically and consistently shown, and the history of anti-fascism has shown that when you argue over tactics, then you weaken your ability to stop fascism. So I find it confusing. I am one of the organizers. I'm with the National Lawyers Guild. We both defended, organized to provide legal support, and we're part of the coalition for August 27th. We were in communication with the interfaith groups and also with the rally. We came together with strong unity. There was 7,000 of us. It is an absolutely false description. I was with the truck the entire time. Those shields, like masks, are being used to protect people who are being terrorized by white supremacists. There are blogs offering bounties on people's heads. To say that those shields are weapons and to line up to defend the right of people who stand with, if they themselves are not self-proclaimed Nazis, is unfathomable to me. It's unfathomable anywhere, but it's very unfathomable to me from the people sitting up there. It's really disturbing. And as we saw with the Stop Urban Shield case, you sat there and said, we trust our police not to use force in the way that Urban Shield does, and that night they used brutal force against nonviolent demonstrators.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Samir, and I'm. Okay, sorry.
You can just speak. It's
I'm one of the. This is the first time I'm speaking in front of City Hall. I felt this was really important because I've never spoken because they showed a picture of the truck with someone standing on it, and they accused us of supporting violence. What I was actually doing was standing in the truck, doing sound so that my community was heard. What I actually was doing was organizing my community for months to make sure they're safe from Nazis. And I basically did it because I felt that too many times walking around in Berkeley, walking around in the Bay Area. I felt threatened by the Nazis. I've been stopped by the Nazis one time because I work as a delivery driver, and I've been stopped by walking into the wrong house, and they stopped me, blocked me, and terrorized me. And someone who still has community, I still felt it was really scary. And also, you're talking about the police at the Urban Shield meeting. I was one of the people who got arrested for peacefully holding a banner. And you said the City Hall trusts the police, but how are we going to trust the police when your police are going to hurt us?
Thank you so much.
Terrorize us
Thank
at
you
a
for your
point
comments. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Lou Williams. I've been a resident of Berkeley since 1954. So I love this town, and I love what it stands for. And I believe this town stands for human rights and justice. It always has, and I hope it always will. I don't trust the police. And the reason is when I was at a peaceful demonstration outside of Longfellow School on June 20th, a police officer hit me on top of the head and caused injury, which I am recovering from. But that officer has never had the guts to stand up and identify him or herself. How can we trust the police? Whose side are you on? Are you on our side for human rights, or are you on the side on the other side?
Thank you for your comments.
Until we learn
Next
that,
speaker, please.
had they had pepper spray
Thank you for your
on
comments.
June 20th, I suspect they would have used it on me too. And where will
Next
this
speaker, please.
end? Where will it end?
Next speaker, please. Thank you very much.
My name is Carol Denny, and as the editor of the Pepper Spray Times, I want to thank the mayor and the chief of police for recognizing the one thing that will bring harmony to our streets and peace to our community: pepper spray. I know that pepper spray has its detractors. There are those who will point out that pepper spray is indiscriminate, and that the likelihood is that bystanders, reporters, as well as the police themselves will all end up getting an unintended dose. But this is part of the beauty of pepper spray. It brings people together. It gives people a shared experience that they're unlikely to forget. And while it may incapacitate or even kill a small ratio, making it hard in either case to comply with police instructions, that's just the price of the unity we'll feel when, covered with tears, snot, and vomit, we embrace pepper spray. So thank you for enabling me to write the headline of my dreams: Pepper Spray Saves
Thank you for your
the
comment.
World.
Okay, so 2 minutes.
I was marching that day with the
Can you move closer
Paul,
to the
can you
mic?
move a little closer?
I was marching that.
Thank you.
Okay. I was marching over that day with the Interfaith group. And first of all, I'm Paul Matzner. I've been in Berkeley for 40 years. I've been around through a lot of the times of people here. I'm in Chris's district. And I remember when Chris will remember also the years when we were designated the People's Republic of Berkeley. Either positively or negatively, we're always smeared no matter what. And it's always used the wrong way by the police. What I want to mention is the protests. I watched every single video, including the ones where Antifa was involved, because I didn't quite get there. I was called back halfway there in an emergency. And I wanted to say that all I saw was mostly nonviolence and people protesting peacefully. In fact, my favorites were the Groucho Marxists, who came in wearing noses and glasses and mustaches, all of them, all 30 of them, in the great tradition of Berkeley for nonviolence, and we mustn't forget that. We mustn't forget that that's our tradition. I'm speaking here today for Becky O'Malley as well as myself. Becky O'Malley, the great editor of our paper, The Daily Planet, which tells the truth many times, and many of you read that. What I wanted to say here was that my experience with the 60s and the 70s with protests was that there was always a plan for escalation. And since my time is running out, I wanted to mention that within those Berkeley side articles are, did somebody just give me another minute?
Okay, another.
Okay.
Do you have another 2 minutes actually yielded to you?
Oh, I see, okay. I didn't know how the clock was running. Okay, so what I wanted to mention about the Berkeley side coverage, which by the way was incredible, and Emily Rugoso should be complimented for that. It was wonderful, wonderful coverage with links to videos, etc., including a link to an article called Reveal. I ask everybody to go in and find that. The article was about the strategy going all the way up to the Heritage Foundation to really begin to smear us and begin to place us in a place as Berkeley. That was confirmed when I looked at MSNBC and saw Joe Scarborough doing exactly the same thing, talking about Berkeley as if Berkeley itself had initiated the violence. And I just want to say that this is the way that things happen, where we get smeared if we don't stick to our merit. The other thing that I want to say is I want to compliment Jesse Arakeen and the council for their strategy during that time, because it was a strategy that, as one person mentioned, created only as much violence as you would have at a Raiders game, and there was certainly the potential for a lot more. So I think we ought to stick to our strategy. I don't think that we ought to give our police weapons of violence or tools of violence. I think that that's only going to fall right into the hands of this strategy by Heritage and other people to begin to beard us and people who work against these nationalists the tools to negate us. And please think about that very carefully before you vote today. Incidentally, I also want to say that I think that there should be another meeting where the whole public is allowed to attend. This is the wrong time. I think we should have a series of meetings that allow us. I think we should have a series of meetings that allow us to air this and get our opinions out on everything. Berkeley is a reasonable bunch of educated folks, and we should come up with a joint strategy. I don't think you'll be sorry for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Evan Lutz. I'm a 30-year resident of several East Bay cities. The characterization of the 27th goes directly against my experience of those protests. I was there. Condemning media reports and politicized announcements also contradict this. And I urge you, before you vote, to seek more information and educate yourselves further rather than fall into accepting the characterization of Antifa as extremists. A danger to this includes having that label spread to anyone who shows up to protest fascism, anyone who feels they need to protect their identity to not be doxxed by these people who are actively acting against people, especially in the LGBTQ community. So I caution you to not just accept the terms that you've been given and to take a deeper look. If our police force is to be made up of peace officers, I want to see police departments pick up the tools of peace rather than additional weapon. I want to see leadership ask for and plan for and provide resources towards extensive training and de-escalation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ishmael Tariq, and I'm here as a member of the National Lawyers Guild. I am an attorney, and I'm a former director of Bay Area Police Watch. And I can say that I'm absolutely astounded at the flimsiness of the presentation that was brought before here by the Berkeley Police Department, taking into account the gravity of what this policy change could mean. Berkeley deserves more. The department can do better. And quite frankly, we need to make sure that we don't have this chilling effect on our First Amendment rights to peaceably assemble. I'm not sure what the basis would be for an officer to be the determinant of who is a peaceful protester or who is not without further study, without further public comment, and without a further serious, more sober approach to what could be a very negative affecting policy change.
Thank you.
Please do not walk down this path of unintended consequences.
Hi, I'd like to really speak quickly about a couple legal issues I want to get on the books. California Civil Code 51.7 says all persons within jurisdiction of the state have the right to be free from any violence or intimidation or threat of violence committed against their persons or property because of political affiliation on or account of any characteristic listed to or defined in subdivision BE, and this is 51.7. The reason I bring this up is Berkeley's putting themselves at extreme liability for not following through on protecting the public, which is trying to gather and peaceably assemble. Americans are against Nazis. All right, we defeated them in World War II. For someone to falsely accuse and slander patriotic Americans as Nazis is vile. But the Westboro Baptist Church is what these people represent. They had to stand away 200 to 300 feet away, and they were kept 1,000 feet away from the actual funeral of a police officer. There's a lot of other issues on the thing that we need to discuss, but false accusations should not be allowed.
Thank you.
Diana Bone, and I'm going to pass out a resolution, a letter to the council that was passed by the Peace and Justice Commission last evening, and read just a portion of it. Specific actions Berkeley needs to take in addition to withdrawing from Urban Shield and NICRIC include internally reporting all uses of force, accelerated rollout of bobby cameras, acknowledgement of a racially disparate pattern of police stops, and adoption of the surveillance ordinance approved by both the Peace and Justice Commission and the Police Review Commissions upon your referral. We also urge you to sunset the urgency ordinance to authorize the city manager to issue rules for street events without permits passed on August 18th. We want it to be sunsetted on September 30th. The elected city council, not staff, should be responsible for enacting laws that regulate public behavior and have legal consequences. We urge the rescission of the unconstitutional anti-masking law promulgated by the city manager.
Thank you.
And
unless there's somebody who wants to yield a minute, okay, in the back.
Yeah,
okay.
oh, thank you. And preservation of the 1997 ban on using pepper spray in crowd control. And speaking for myself, I want to say, I remember in the December 2015, the terrible use of tear gas by the police. It was not carefully done. I don't think we can guess that they'll be doing the same with that they'll be very careful with pepper spray, and it does spread out. It doesn't just go to the people that are sprayed. So I remember 2015, and I think the problem still exists for that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Jordan Keene. I am a current undergraduate student at UC Berkeley. I am the EAVP Public Safety Manager for the ASUC. There's three main points I'd like to talk about. One is that when police shoot into a crowd, whether it be tear gas, whether it be pepper spray, they're going to hit unintended targets. And there's many factors that guarantee a bad outcome in this. One could be the wind, the way a crowd disperses, and the stress that goes to police officers. Second, when making policy decisions like this in an atmosphere of fear, it guarantees a bad outcome. So when staff and council have disregarded the Police Review Commission, now with more progressive majority, and making decisions in the urgency ordinance, the mask policy, and now the pepper spray policy, if you consider expanding the powers of the Police Review Commission with one hand, you render the commission's advisory role most. Third point.
Sorry, your time is up. You have a minute from Ms. Ritchie in the front.
Thank you. The third point I'd like to point out is that in 2014, the Black Lives Matter protest, countless students were injured as a result of Berkeley Police Department crowd control techniques. Those memories and that trauma is still fresh among the student population. And when Berkeley police should not be further enabled to injure innocent bystanders like this. When police respond this way, peaceful protesters always pay the price.
Let's not have any interruptions to the audience as people are speaking.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Raymond Barglow, and I'm a member of the Wellstone Democratic Renewal Club. And 3 of my grandparents died in Germany and in Poland at the hands of the Nazis, in concentration camps and by Einsatzgruppen. And I've studied the period considerably. One of the problems was that the police, the German police, the Austrian police, this happened in Italy as well, they did not enforce the law. They allowed violence to go on without intervening. They did not try to separate the protesters and the counter-protesters. So I believe that your obligation is to do what you can so that the police will intervene as non-violently as possible and arrest those who are violent.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caden Nason. I'm president of Cal Berkeley Democrats. I just wanted to come here today and say that I'm concerned with any type of reactionary policies, especially ones that will inevitably cause harm to people that live in Berkeley. I will probably just be reiterating points that have been made today, but everybody shares these concerns, is that if we give police the authorization to pepper spray a crowd of people, it's not going to just be their targeted person. If pepper spray goes off in a house, you're probably going to have to leave because your eyes are going to start burning. It's not going to be good if if you're right next to that person. I'd encourage City Council to at least look and try to come up with some type of solution that won't be putting your voters and your constituents and people in harm's way. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Thomas Hodgman. I'm here speaking on my own behalf as well as that of Zachary Runningwolf, who could not be here today because he was arrested by the OPD this morning for nothing more than possession of spray paint. He's been arrested 4 times in the last year, all during a monthly nonviolent protest movement that he's been leading to stop driving because of global warming. We see the urgency of this now and it's very much connected to the issue here today because this is not just about pepper spray, it's about mutual aid. The issue with Urban Shield is about how BPD and OPD collaborate in militarization. This is a hearing about an event that's going to take place on the UC campus. Again, mutual aid. To hold a rushed meeting about arming the Berkeley Police Department with pepper spray at 3 o'clock when a lot of students are on campus, most probably haven't even heard about this, is irresponsible, and it furthers a trend of just completely ignoring the issue with police right now. Is not that they don't have enough weapons, it's that they continue to criminalize and suppress nonviolent dissent as well.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Police Chief. Good to see you. My name is Terry Rowan. I'm a resident of Richmond. I now attend Berkeley City College. And I was at the March 2nd and March 15th rally. I was there just to hear a few speakers do their speeches, and then 5 seconds later, I was brutally attacked along with my friends by this group. And if it wasn't for the police chief,
please. Let's not cast accusations against people.
But again, I was followed to BART, and people were blocking BART, so I couldn't get home. And I'm very proud to call this guy. I think this police chief is doing the right thing by preventing people from getting hit or physically hit, and it's protecting me from going ahead and attending these events. I want to attend these events, but I can't because I'm being followed and I'm being attacked. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm in favor.
Next speaker,
Thank
please.
Hi, I'm Marcia Poole. I live in Berkeley. And I wanted to say that I really do not think you should allow pepper spray. It really is unconscionable to even take this up. We saw in the videos of the students at Davis how they were sitting on the ground and they were pepper sprayed while they were very peaceful. They were sitting on the ground, and some of them even had it put in their eyes. So you can't be in charge of every single police officer, and things can go wrong. I say no to the pepper spray. And also the Black Lives Matter march, which happened December 2015. I was in my apartment above Telegraph Avenue when they did the spraying of the tear gas, and I'm asthmatic. Even with doors closed and windows closed, I got tear gas in my apartment.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you. My name is Lindsay Krantz. I'm a member of the National Lawyers Guild. Please do not deregulate the use of pepper spray on crowds. In 1997, the Police Review Commission recommended discontinuing the use of pepper spray after suboptimal outcomes in Berkeley from 1993 to 1997. This process runs around the Police Review Commission, the Disability Commission, the Environmental Commission, and the Peace and Justice Commission. Why? BPD might say that they shall attempt to precisely spray into crowds, but that's just not how this works. Spraying into crowds is collective punishment with a not usually lethal weapon, which endangers people with breathing difficulty and contact lenses. And such ableist treatment of protesters opens the city to lawsuits. The combined changes in sections 18D and 20B would allow BPD to deploy pepper spray with nearly no review.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker.
Is this just another torture memo?
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Okay. So, first of all, I'm not going to repeat all the really good points that have been made today. There's been a lot of good points, and I just want to, first of all, encourage everyone here to come out to the People Speak Out Against White Supremacy, Xenophobia, Misogyny, and Fascism. We're doing it at exactly the same time that Ben Shapiro is speaking at UC Berkeley. It's going to be 6 p.m. at Sproul Plaza, which, by the way, is the actual home of the birthplace of the actual free speech movement, which, as someone said, was actually about the right of students to stand up and fight against racial injustice at that time and against the Vietnam War, not about the right of any racist or fascist to come onto campus and spew poison. And I also want to say, the main point I want to make is that this conversation is happening in the context of the rise of fascism in this society, okay? There's a fascist regime in the White House which right now is terrorizing our immigrant brothers and sisters. 800,000 just had their lives completely destroyed by this regime. They're banning Muslims. They're banning transgender people. They're attacking. They have a cabinet full of climate change deniers. Can I get another minute? Thank you. Okay. They have a cabinet full of climate change deniers at the same time as the hurricanes are gaining in strength because of global warming. This is an existential danger to humanity. They are a fascist regime. They don't care about civil liberties. These people are the enemies of free speech. What did Donald Trump say? He said that people that burn the American flag should have their citizenship revoked. He said he wants to change the libel laws to be able to punish journalists for speaking out. These people are the enemies of free speech. Ann Coulter, Milo Yiannopoulos, Ben Shapiro want to come onto campus. Ann Coulter thinks that liberals like you guys should be thrown in Guantanamo Bay. That's what she says. She's demonizing immigrants. She's demonizing Muslims. Ben Shapiro too. Milo Yiannopoulos too. These people don't care about free speech. They're using free speech as a pretext to get a foothold to normalize fascism on these college campuses and to recruit a new generation of fascist youth into their movement. And the question is, what role are you guys going to play in this? Are you guys going to go down in history? Are you guys going to go down in history like the shameful collaborators?
Next speaker, please.
Like the shameful collaborators? Can I have another minute? They gave me 2 minutes, okay? They gave me 2 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, are you going to go down in history like the shameful collaborators, like the Judenrat? Do you know who the Judenrat were? They were the Jewish collaborators with the Nazis. They were the ones in charge of policing the ghetto. Okay, they had a logic. They had a rationale to it. They said if we collaborate with the Nazis, it'll make things a little easier for the Jewish people. Okay? What ended up happening? They ended up paving the way to the death camps. And there have been people who have been speaking very righteously from the historical experience of what actually happened in Nazi Germany. Okay? It is not Nazi Germany. It is America in 2017. The fascists are wrapping themselves in the flag. They're carrying the cross. It's a little different. But don't be mistaken, okay? Hitler came to power in 1933. The Holocaust began in 1942. But think about everything that happened leading up to that. They changed the laws. You guys are trying to change the laws. They had the fascist foot soldiers unleashed, the brown shirts rallying in the streets. They had their intellectual operatives like Joseph Goebbels on the college campuses.
Next speaker, please.
Come to the people.
Next speaker, please.
Elliot Halpern. Today I am representing the ACLU. First of all, I want to say that the ACLU generally does not endorse pepper spray or the use of force. And secondly, does not endorse the use of pepper spray to address, for this policy, to address the Antifa protesters and counter-protesters. But I want to add one more point, important point. In this rush to patch a law enforcement tool, have we given all the consideration that is needed? The original policy took months to come to what it came to. Have we considered the medical and safety concerns with using pepper spray? Most law enforcement that uses it has immediate medical staff available for use. Can I get a minute somewhere?
Okay, so another minute's been yielded to Mr. Halpern.
Secondly, since there really hasn't been much pepper spray use in Berkeley for about 20 years, do you feel comfortable with the training the police have gone through, with their judgments? I just think you're making a rush decision here, or trying to, and you're not giving it all the consideration it needs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Terry Kay. I'm with Workers' World Party, and I want to say that Chief Greenwald starts the whole thing upside down on a false premise that there's a need to protect free speech for Nazis and white supremacists. Where in the Constitution do people who incite violence, hatred, and the murder of other people get protected for free speech? That's not part of free speech. In fact, what they do, the police have not protected the people who have had their store windows bashed because they have Black Lives Matter signs in their windows, or Muslims in this city who have been attacked for carrying out their faith. The police have not protected those people against these fascists and white supremacists. You know, all four of my grandparents were killed during the concentration camps, and a lot of my aunts and uncles too. The way my parents survived is they actually had false ID and hid underground, and that's how they've survived.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you.
Can I get a minute?
Okay.
I've got a minute.
Okay.
So they hid underground.
So
and
if your minute's yielded, you don't have a minute for yourself.
That's what the Antifa are doing when they cover their faces, is they're preventing themselves from being violently attacked by these fascists and neo-Nazis who are searching them out, doxing them, and trying to stop the movement against fascism in this country. And these people are not the ones that should be under attack here. These are people who are understanding the need to fight fascism in this country. Trump has unleashed the strong right wing in this country who feel emboldened under him. And you guys are playing right into those hands when you want to protect the rights of people who are fomenting violence against black people, Muslims, Jews, and others, immigrants. That's what these fascists are trying to do, and they have no right to be protected for free speech for fomenting violence.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, y'all. My name is Victoria Berdine. I am a student at UC Berkeley. I'm also the chair of Cal Students for Equal Rights and a Valid Education, and I'm a resident in the city. I'm here on the small break that I have in between my classes to make a comment about the use of pepper spray, because I think it's really absurd that this is even brought up again. It was determined long ago that the use of pepper spray is not great for people. It's determined that it's pretty inhumane and the effects are not, so they're too substantial to even be using in this context. I'm also appalled that you would have this meeting at a time when so many students are in class, and you know that so often the people participating in these protests and events with large crowds are students. You need to give them more chances to speak on this, which is obviously not here at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Second, I just want to reiterate the point that you should probably revisit the 1997 documents in which...
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the Council. My name is Christina DiEduardo. I'm proud to have been a criminal defense attorney for the last 12 years, but I'm far prouder to have stood with Antifa and the Black Bloc at all 4 battles of Berkeley, where we drove the fascists out. And at all 4 of those, Mr. Mayor, let me tell you, at 2 occasions I was hit with pepper spray by fascists. Your police did nothing. On one occasion, I had to take a weapon away from a gentleman who appeared to be a Nazi skin because he was beating someone who was prone on the ground with it. Your police did nothing. I saw them flee at the 4th Battle of Berkeley. And it's really particularly libelous to hear that see Antifa accused of storming a march when they were asked to protect it because the police had left. Not only is this change in policy obnoxious, it is also ineffective. When we go out, we take our lives in our hands. Your pepper spray will not stop us.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Please, next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Jessica Sexton, and I am the descendant of Jews who were killed and also escaped the Nazis in Poland. Protesting is our right. Protesting fascism is our duty. Yeah. Protesting the status quo scares those enforcing it. When the status quo is scared, it panics and it fights back. We do not need to weaponize this fight any further. What we need is for our city leaders to listen to their citizens rather than normalizing fascism. Do not allow the use of pepper spray on citizens who are driven to say no to fascism. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kathy, and I live in the neighborhood. And I was at the event on August 27th and was completely surprised at the way the media portrayed that event. I really do understand that this is a moving target, and we don't know what to do. But pepper spray does not seem to be the right answer to the problem. I live a couple blocks away. It kind of freaked me out to see the police suddenly put on their gas masks and plumes of smoke going up, not knowing what that was, not knowing if that was going to affect my family. So I really feel like we have to come up with good solutions. I don't think pepper spray is it, and I don't think the arguments around it could hurt other people in the area. It's more philosophical than that. Is that who we want to be? I don't think it's who I want to be. I was there with 4,000 people that were all excited to be there to participate. I just wanted to say that if you do pepper spray, people like regular people in the community won't come out because they're going to be afraid.
Hey there, I'm Josh Buswell-Charco. I'm from District 2, a longtime resident of Berkeley. I actually came to this meeting undecided, but I gotta say I'm actually a supporter of the proposal after hearing everything. And the reason is this: if there are Nazis or fascists or God forbid, conservatives who decide to come to Berkeley, I have the right to protest them and the right to challenge them with my views and to expose their idiocy, and that's my right. And there are some people who want the ability to deny me that right and to use violence against some people who may espouse opinions that I personally abhor. But they have that right. And I haven't heard a viable proposal about what the cops are supposed to do in the face of people that want to use violence to silence people with whom they disagree. And if this ordinance is going to better allow me to use my speech to challenge those with whom I disagree, then I fully support this proposal.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Eleanor Levine. I'm a member of Code Pink, although I'm not representing Code Pink. I also work with the Stop Urban Shield Coalition. And I want to ask the City Council, who's in charge here? Who's really in charge of what's going on in this city? It's the elected officials. The community is speaking. The community is concerned. I have 2 minutes, by the way. Somebody has given me a minute. You need to listen to the concerns of the community. You cannot be acting out of fear. If the police department is concerned about its officers being attacked, if the police department is concerned about the safety of the officers, then you all need to work together to find ways to de-escalate, to train the police department to be responsible for its actions, to be accountable in the ways that Andrea Pritchett and others have talked about. You need to de-escalate, you need to train better, you need to have more accountability, and providing the officers with tear gas is going to, with pepper spray, is going to solve nothing. More violence leads to more violence. It does not lead to peace. There are proven ways. I'm not the expert, but there are people out there who can help you work with the police. The police need to be accountable to the people, not to themselves. The police need to be accountable to the city council. We need to solve this problem, and it needs to be solved in a way that prevents the fascists from gaining a stronghold and prevents the kinds of confrontations that occur at demonstrations because the police are not doing their job properly. So please, you're in charge. You need to take charge of this, and you need to solve it in a way that's reasonable and peaceful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly Hammergren. I appreciate those of you who are sitting here and paying attention while we've had this many speakers, and it's disappointing for those council members that seem to be on their computer and gossiping and talking.
So comments should be directed to council as a body, not to individual members.
Excuse me, Jesse. I have the opportunity to speak, and I am saying what I see.
But there's certain, as you know, rules of decorum.
Jesse, we know you have made up your mind. We saw that in the Daily Planet. I'm a registered nurse. I want to remind you that pepper spray is not without danger. It can be fatal. I sent you a number of articles to read and review. This has serious consequences. We don't know who's going to be affected by that pepper spray. We don't know which person's going to respond. We don't know how many minutes they're going to spray people.
Okay, so Ms. Hammergren has another minute.
But this is potentially very, very serious. When you read respiratory arrest, that means people are unable to breathe any longer, and that's when their heart stops and they have sudden death. When you spray into the face, there can be permanent damage. There's bronchospasm, there's respiratory injuries. This is serious. It's not a benign weapon. It's not benign in crowd control. And if someone is restrained after the use of pepper spray, the possibility of death is higher. Death from pepper spray isn't always picked up on autopsy because physicians are not used to seeing it, but it's there. And please read the articles I sent you. Thank you.
Well, I have to say that I'm not surprised that this issue is here and that you're actually probably looking at it favorably, because you have already shown that you are complicit in the formation of a police state, a police rule in this city, by accepting false testimony and mendacious reporting from the police department every time they come here and ask for something else. That happened with NICRIC. It happened with the license plate readers. They made false promises on that. It happened with their report on December of 2014, which I critiqued, and they never answered my critique. It happened with Kayla Moore, and they have never owned up to what they did in that. Listen, read the Cop Watch investigation, and they are giving false testimony now in the text that is there in the agenda on the pepper spray and on what happened on April 27th. And you're believing liars, and you're making policy on the basis of lies, mendacious reports, false testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
I have a minute from Gwendolyn.
I don't see, okay, great, thank you.
JP, 2 points I'd like to make that may not have been addressed yet. The first is that the 1977 study that was commissioned by the Berkeley City Council, done by the PRSA, not only said, well, it said that pepper spray was not only ineffective, but it was worse than ineffective. It made more people more aggressive than it made people less aggressive. So what they said is simply false based on the report of 20 years ago that was done at the request of the City Council. So it's just, and you, whatever. Okay. Second, look, crowds are volatile. My guess is that a crucial reason that the 1977 council forbid the use of pepper spray within crowds was because attempting to spray individuals in a crowd could incite the crowd, right? It could result in escalation, serious escalation. It could result in an uncontrollable situation, a stampede, a riot. Many people could get hurt, right? You have a large crowd going against a relatively small number of police. You start spraying. You don't know what's going to happen. Are you willing to be responsible for inciting that kind of thing? For a stampede, for a riot? Again, what happened in 2014 and otherwise elsewhere in the Bay? This is a really serious concern, right? What we need is de-escalation, not escalation. So please reject this.
I'm Becky O'Malley. I authorized Paul to speak for me because I thought I'd be stuck at Kaiser, but I wasn't stuck at Kaiser. So I would just like to speak to you wearing the many hats that I've had in my 77 years. I've worked as an attorney, I've worked as a corporate executive, I've worked as a member of the press, and I have to say that of all the dumb ideas I've seen lately, this is one of the dumbest. There is really no excuse for saying that you need to spray pepper spray into any kind of crowd doing anything. I make no brief for the idiots who got into the fistfights on the 27th. I was there, I was right down in front. Made me a little nervous because I realized I must always wear black and I might be mistaken for the wrong people, but fortunately nobody sprayed me. But the idea that you can control a few, and I'm going to call them all thugs. To me, they're all thugs. A few thugs getting into fistfights by spraying a whole crowd with pepper spray is a foolish idea. I do not know who talked you into having a special meeting to discuss it. We did settle it. I'm old. We settled it, as JP pointed out, 20 years ago. We do not need to revisit this, and we will have legal consequences if on Thursday, these same thugs get into a fight and the crowd is sprayed with pepper spray. I know many lawyers who would love to take that case when the wrong person gets sprayed.
Thank you. So, ma'am, you already yielded your time to the speaker, so that's not how it works. I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you. Is the next speaker, please?
So, hello, my name is Honey Sain, and I'm here representing myself. I'm a student here at UC Berkeley. So I'm here in between work and school. I'm here to oppose the breach of strong pepper spray policy by Berkeley PD. I want to echo what's already been said about the absurdity of hosting this meeting at 3 p.m. in the afternoon when most students are in class and are a critical part of this discussion. My campus has become a literal battleground for everyone who feels like they're entitled to, and now it's in our streets. As if escaping war-torn Somalia wasn't enough, I have to deal with the militarized police on and off campus in Berkeley, California. Pepper spray is indiscriminate and will result in collective action, and I would like you all to see that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could somebody yield a man with a mustache 1 minute? Anybody? Emily?
I see somebody in the back who yielded a minute. So.
Thank you, Your Lordship. Is there anybody else?
No, he's been yielded. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Your Lordship. So, with regards to this, the sheer arrogance, and I see we have the illustrious Linda Rose Mayo deigning to grace us with her presence. Thank you, Linda Rose Mayo, for gracing us with your presence and your short time on the council. All of what? More than 25 years. Moving right along, I am appalled that anybody in this city, this rinky-dink charter city called Berkeley, is going to try to attempt to change policy that has been in place for 20 years. Not as long as Linda Miles has been on the council, but 20 years. This is reactionary. We have a brilliant city attorney We have a brilliant city manager. Could we please de-escalate the violence in this community? We have stupid Cal students. We have an idiot chancellor who believes that her gray hair gives her wisdom. Carol Christ is an idiot. Sorry, Carol Christ. When someone does not have event insurance, you cancel the event. You do not put police officers, particularly police officers who have families and children and lives, at risk. You do not put police at risk. You do not escalate violence. You do not change policy that has been in place for 20 years. Okay? This is a matter of simplicity. De-escalate. Do not change existing policy. Listen to our city manager. Listen to our city attorney. And Carol Christ and Daniel Muzzleloff with your nighttime events without insurance. Shame on both of you.
Thank you. Any other speakers regarding this item? This is the last chance for public comment. Any other speakers regarding this item? Any other speakers? We're going to close public comment. Okay. Please, thank you.
I would just like to second. My name is Colin Dodsworth, and I would just like to second that I think it's a terrible idea to change policy.
Thank you. Any other speakers regarding this item? Any other speakers? Seeing no other speakers, that concludes public comment on this item. And now it's the opportunity for the council to ask questions as well as to take action on this issue. And as the council deliberates on this issue, I'd like to ask the audience to please not interrupt. We have listened to over an hour of your testimony. Really appreciate you coming today to give us your opinions, but we need to have the opportunity to engage with staff, to ask questions, and to discuss this issue. So I want to once again reread the motion that I have put forward, because some people have joined the meeting after I read the motion, so everyone knows what I am proposing and specifically what the department is asking for. So the motion that I am putting forward for consideration by the council this almost evening now is to reaffirm the 1997 prohibition on the use of pepper spray as a crowd control technique, and to further amend that policy regarding the use of pepper spray by our police department as it relates to crowd control, expression of First Amendment speech, and addressing acts of violence by specific individuals within a crowd. And the specific policy we will be adopting this, if action is taken this evening, is pepper spray shall not be used as a crowd control technique to disperse a crowd or move a crowd. Pepper spray shall not be used on persons engaged in legal speech or other expression that is protected by the First Amendment, nor upon those committing unlawful acts by nonviolent or passive resistance means. And we heard a lot of comments during public testimony, and certainly the idea that comes to, I think, all of our heads is UC Davis, where pepper spray was used indiscriminately on nonviolent protesters. That is not what the department has asked us for. And this language saying that pepper spray shall not be used on persons engaged in First Amendment activity or committing unlawful acts by nonviolent or passive resistant means makes it extremely clear that that is not allowed. And if any officer violates this policy, they are abusing their authority, and action, disciplinary action, could be taken. The authority we are giving our police department is not to allow a UC Davis type situation. Lastly, the specific authority that we are providing the police department, if we adopt this motion this evening, is police may use pepper spray upon specific individuals within a crowd who are committing acts of violence upon police or others. Only if they are committing acts of violence on police or others. For no other reason can police use pepper spray in a crowd situation. That is what we're proposing this afternoon. And I want to say, you know, there have been a number of comments that have been made, and I really appreciate people coming out and providing your perspective. People referenced to the report about extremists. We have seen extremists on the left and on the right in our city. That is the reality. That is the reality. And so we need to make sure that violence is not allowed by anyone who wants to come out and wants to demonstrate and stand up to people. Please, out of order, we have the floor. So I just want to clarify that our staff, we're not making any distinguishing between ideology. We are concerned about violence being used in any First Amendment situation. And I also was one of the thousands of people that was at Oxford outside the Crescent standing up to white supremacism and fascism. I was there, as well as probably every single person there. And that was peaceful. But the reality, and we have to recognize as well, and I agree that the narrative that was put out there was not entirely accurate. There were thousands of peaceful protesters that were there. But there were a few number of people that did have weapons and that did engage in violence. That is the reality. We have to recognize that that is the reality. And that is not acceptable. Violence has no place in our democracy. And we have to make sure that everyone, regardless of their political opinion, has a right to engage in First Amendment activity. We also have to recognize that our police officers are human beings. They are there to protect our safety. We have to recognize the dangerous job that they're in, and we need to protect them just as we are protecting free speech. And I think that's why this proposal is so essential. Councilmember Waingraff, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to thank the people who were involved in crafting this motion so narrowly. I very much appreciate the work that you did. I don't know exactly who was involved, but thank you very much. I have some questions for our police staff. There's been a lot of discussion here tonight about unintended consequences of pepper spray and using pepper spray. And I wondered if you could address that. Some of the things that we heard from the public were about health consequences and also inciting or activating more violence. So I wondered if any of you might be able to respond to that.
I'm not aware of particular unintended consequences. We use it very infrequently. The policy's been in place since 1997. It's a national tool. If there were unintended consequences, serious health ramifications of law enforcement using pepper spray as a tool across our country, I would expect it would be a big issue that we're all aware of, and I'm simply not aware of that. So the comments that I heard don't resonate with me in terms of accuracy. We're, of course, concerned about any application of the use of force. Our policy with regards to pepper spray currently and in the future, regardless of the developments today, would be that we try to get the person medical assistance and we get them cleared if they're arrested. So I guess that's my perspective. I don't know if you have something to add or...
In addition, to add to that, we've seen over the past couple months dozens of people who have been exposed to pepper spray in the crowd, not from us, and all of those people have received medical attention. Many of those times it was from my team. We always have a medic in the crowd in our group, and we are attending to those people, and I don't know of any serious health consequences as a result of being pepper sprayed in the crowd.
And can you address the accusation that the use of pepper spray incites violence rather than de-escalate violence?
In a crowd situation where arrests are made and force is used, my experience is that always incites violence from those who are already predisposed towards violence towards the police. So when a decision is made, for example, to arrest somebody close to the line of a skirmish line, almost inevitably, as soon as that person's arrested and pulled into custody, there are a violent response. That's my experience throughout my career. So the idea that use of pepper spray is going to incite a particular kind of response to me, any use of force is going to incite a response, and that's a major reason why we're very careful about our use of force, and we're looking at the complexity of these situations very carefully.
Please.
So my last question, and then I'd like to come back later on after I hear from my colleagues, but I didn't hear anything from any of the speakers about alternative tools to the use of pepper spray. And I'm very concerned about, I feel I have an obligation to give you the tools that you need to keep safe so that you can keep all of us safe. So I'm curious to know, are there alternative tools that we might want to consider either now or in the future?
Once again, please, we had public comment. It's now time for council discussion. Please, no interruptions from the public.
So the reason we're here...
Please, you're out of order.
The reason we're here is because of the lack of options that we have, from a police officer standing on a line to preserve space for First Amendment expression, and that police officer has some padding, a 36-inch baton, and then from there we have less lethal projectiles, which these shields are very effective against, and from there we have smoke canisters and tear gas canisters. There are not other tools. There are no other tools to fill that gap where we can have a tool which applies a direct use of force. My concern is, we heard a lot of folks talking about the ill effects of tear gas earlier in the comments. I share that concern. My concern, and the reason we're here today as kind of a matter of urgency facing a number of demonstrations in the next 14 days, is that absent an intermediate use of force, such as the pepper spray that we're talking about here, in a situation where officers are going to have to stand a line because there may not be an option to move, yield, withdraw, whatever verb you want to put in there, but there may not be an option to move when those who come to stop expression of First Amendment right, when they're willing to physically try to overcome a police line which is set up to preserve that space. I'm concerned we're going to be in a situation where we're going to be on that line, we're not going to have that tool, and the next thing up essentially is going to be tear gas to back a crowd off where we're being attacked. That's it, flat and simple. It's a very challenging situation, and that tool is what we believe we need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Hahn.
Thank you. I also had a couple of questions. First of all, you state in the report that Berkeley police officers all carry pepper spray currently. Is that correct? I didn't realize that, so I just was wanting to hear a little more about that. And I also would like to understand what the protocols are for using pepper spray outside of a crowd. And you state in the report that you only have used it approximately 3 times a year, and I'd be interested in knowing, like, what are the situations where whatever other methodologies you have at your disposal to handle a situation fail and lead to the use of pepper spray. I'm very interested in better understanding essentially the current use, because I think people may not understand that our police department already carry this pepper spray with them, and that we have protocols. And I'd really like to better understand that for myself.
So all officers carry pepper spray. This is exactly what we issue an officer. I would like Sergeant Fonby to comment on its use. And I would just add that every time we use pepper spray, there's a report that we make to City Council, which is an open public document. So the City Council, our community, it's extremely transparent that way. And anyone interested in the situations in which pepper spray is used has the ability to find that information online through our reports to Council.
Sure. So as I stated before, all police officers are exposed to pepper spray in training in the academy. And then officers are issued pepper spray on patrol. So every officer who's in uniform on patrol has pepper spray. The officers use it infrequently. There are other tools that we use. So depending on the situation, the officer may go hands-on, use their actual hands to take a person into custody. They also have access to a baton. And in certain situations where it makes sense, the officers will use pepper spray. The officers are then required to get that person medical attention and have that person medically cleared. So we'll have BFD come and check that person. If that person is in custody, they're going to go to the hospital to get medically cleared. The officers will then report that use of force to their sergeant, and their supervisor will make a use of force report determining whether that force was justified or not. Then, as the chief reported, we will create a report that will come to council.
Okay, thank you. For those of us who are not involved day to day with policing, I still would like maybe just a description of a scenario. Like, I'm not understanding in what context, because it sounds like it's a very infrequently used tool, so it must be, I'm sure it's not always the same, but, or is there some way that I can pull those reports up and view them? I'd like a little little meat on the bones.
Sure. So pepper spray, just like this proposal states, cannot be used against people who are passively resisting. So if somebody is sitting, they won't move, they won't get up, they won't get out of their car or something like that. The officers are not allowed to pepper spray them. Pepper spray is only used when people are in a violent confrontation, either two people fighting each other or somebody who's violently attacking a police officer. So that's the general context, and that's what our policy states.
There is a specific policy for the use of pepper spray outside of a crowd.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for now.
Thank you. Councilor Davila.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the accounts that was stated this evening is nothing of what we heard tonight from the audience members, and also from I was not there on the 27th or any of the protests. However, I did view it on Facebook and talked to numerous people, and it is not the same account that was given this evening. So that's disheartening and disappointing, to say that. Also, I just have to state, like, untruths are untruths. On June 20th, unfortunately, I heard the chief state an untruth when he said that there were no fatal fatalities by the Berkeley PD, when he completely omitted Kayla Moore's death in police custody. So, and then seeing like all this stuff here, you know, props, whatever, is, you know, I don't know. I didn't see any of that when I was viewing the protest. From when I talked to the faith leaders that were there, all the people that I talked to, it was just people, 7,000 people in the streets trying to keep the peace and keep the neo-Nazis out of Berkeley. No mention of neo-Nazis was in your presentation. That's very, very problematic. There was no mention of the, you know, the racism and the I don't understand why that wasn't part of your presentation, because that's the reason why all this stuff is happening, period. It needs to be acknowledged. And why are we defending the freaking neo-Nazis? I don't get that. Pepper spray is an inflammatory compound that causes the eyes and mucous membranes in the upper respiratory tract to swell, causing pain, shortness of breath, intense burning on the skin, and temporary blindness. It's made from hot chilies like cayenne. It is concentrated, and it's an aerosol. We are in climate change catastrophe right now. We do not need to be putting any more elements that will break down climate into the atmosphere. Pepper spray cannot be like everyone said, there's people with medical conditions that you may not be aware of that you could cause a cardiac arrest, you could cause asthma, to, person that has asthma to go into an emergency. You have the tool. Why are we here? You're already using it, And the fact that this meeting is at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, the last meeting was on a Friday at 3 o'clock. I don't understand why public input is not only recognized by this council on numerous occasions. That has to change. And why are we having these meetings when the public can't even get here? I don't get that as well. That's problematic. We need to change that. Also, on June 20th, we saw what Urban Shield looked like. This past weekend, went through the trauma of going to the Urban Shield. It was very traumatic. This is just more part of the militarization of the police, which I would imagine and hope that we would try to get away from in this DT time where fascists are getting the red light or the green light to just be everywhere and do whatever they want, and are protected by police all throughout the country and by the president. So that's seriously problematic as well. Chemical weaponry is barbaric tactic that harkens back to the Agent Orange in Vietnam. Why are we going there? Why are we doing this? Aerosol chemicals are a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. I oppose this wholeheartedly.
So I'm next on the queue. I'd like to ask some questions. I wanted to make sure that I understand your statements correctly. Thank you, Councilmember Wengraff, for asking about the other options you have available: the tear gas, less than lethal projectiles, smoke, and baton strikes if there's a violent aggressor in the crowd. I'm wondering, so the impetus behind this urgency ordinance, it essentially revolves around public safety and the concern around injuries that have occurred or may occur to the public and officers. Is that the sole impetus, or is there another impetus behind this ordinance, perhaps a tactical measure?
We're seeking council to revise this policy because we're going into what could be a very violent demonstration on Thursday night and 4 nights of violent demonstrations Sunday through Wednesday in later September. And I anticipate there are going to be times when Berkeley police officers and our fellow law enforcement mutual aid are going to be asked to stand a line to keep space open for expression of First Amendment speech. And there's not going to be a choice to withdraw. And I and we are trying to get every tool we can so that we have the most options available to us to deal with that problem in the face of now what we have seen historically, large groups acting in a coordinated manner, armed and willing to use violence to take space. The extremists, I just want to say that our use of the word extremist here applies regardless of political will. The February 1st attack at UC was 150 folks, 150 extremists. And there were no sort of police confrontations there. So I'm fundamentally concerned that we're going to have to deal with a situation where we're not going to have the ability or option, as we did on August 27th, to move police to yield space. That's it.
Thank you. And just to be clear, so a lot of these questions are for clarification. If this proposal passes tonight, will we still get a report on the usage of pepper spray? I know currently we get a report, and approximately the police use pepper spray around 3 times a year. I just want to clarify that.
Sure.
Will we get a report?
I absolutely will affirm we'll continue reporting pepper spray use as it currently exists in all of our policies.
Thank Thank you. And General Order U2 Section 20 specifies that pepper spray can't be used against peaceful, nonviolent expressions of the First Amendment. I'm glad that the mayor mentioned the UC Davis incident because I wanted to mention that as well. That would not be allowed to occur with this policy, so I'm glad that the mayor reiterated that. And I also want to make sure, again, sort of a clarification, that the intent of the police force is to use pepper spray only as a defensive measure to target specific violent offenders. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, in these crowd situations. The idea is that it's not used indiscriminately. It's not used to move a crowd. It's used when we're facing physical contact on the line or trying to work to interdict in physical violence that's happening close to us in a skirmish line or line situation.
Thank you. So I want to acknowledge and reiterate what many speakers said tonight, and that the last protest was largely peaceful. Last month, the violent agitators were in the minority. At the same time, we've seen protests this year we remember the white supremacist, the Nazi that punched the young woman in the face, and we're familiar again with the outlier, isolated incidences last month. So even though if we're talking about the last protest, this last protest was largely peaceful, which I acknowledge that the violent aggressors were used as propaganda by the right wing. I acknowledge that. We can't deny that there have been violent agitators at our protests, and I often remember that guy punching that young woman in the face. So what I hear tonight is that our police chief and our police department and our city manager and our mayor is asking for city council's help. They're asking city council's help. They've mentioned that it's urgent in order to deal with specific violent aggressors in our city, in order to maintain public safety and peaceful expression of thought. I really want to thank our mayor and our staff for trying to ensure public safety, and I would like to move the motion as presented by the mayor.
Okay, I second. Councilmember Harrison.
I have a number of questions, and then I have some comments. My three questions, Chief, for you are, can you tell us a little bit more about the situations in which this would be used? In some cases, you've mentioned violence, and in other cases, you've mentioned contact with the line. I want to know what you mean by that. When is the instance in which you believe the policy as stated by the mayor's revision, which people are protecting their First Amendment rights by unlawful acts of nonviolent or passive resistance, cross into over a line into where you would want to use pepper spray? I need to understand that better.
It would be situations where I would say a coordinated element of a crowd is using force to bypass, get through, dismantle, disrupt a police skirmish line. That's our concern. We've seen that in Seattle, and I should have included a couple photographs of what that looks like when you have folks with shields blasting up against a police line. So that is that clear enough?
Yes, that helps. I also wanted to understand something about the targeted use of the pepper spray. You all carry these personal items right now, pepper spray. Every officer has that. You indicate that you will be using this in a targeted fashion. What's inadequate about that small can to do this in a targeted fashion? Why do you need these bigger bazookas for this targeted use that you're talking about?
So the kind of conflict I'm thinking about is going to be dynamic and chaotic. It's going to involve multiple people. And when we talk about targeted, that means that we're able to aim it and target at a smaller area, the area right in front of us, the person or persons whose behavior we're trying to affect. That is in contrast to tear gas canisters, which expel gas all over the place and cross-contaminate the environment. They move up into the air. You're hitting all sorts of folks. So there's not, absent the use of a dispenser like this, there's not a way to apply a significant amount of pepper spray onto a specific target that's in front of you. Okay. Is that?
Yeah. And then why is it that you wouldn't just begin to arrest people in that situation rather than using pepper spray?
Because the fight is such that you need to deal with the fight, and a single arrest is difficult.
When we're on the line here, essentially we're there with batons. If a group of people with shields and sticks tries to go through our line, then we're just having, a head-up battle. So we understand there's going to be a lot of injured people on both sides if we do that, and use of pepper spray is a way to move that crowd back and to reduce the chances of violence.
Please, let's have order.
Let's have order. And I would say when he says move a crowd back, what he's talking about is the aggressors who are aggressing on the line.
Please, let's have order.
Okay.
Let's continue with the meeting. Councilor Harrison, your recommendation.
Yes, thank you. I now feel compelled to make some comments. I've lived here for 42 years, and I was on a plane back from out of the country to see this measure, which is brought up to us as an urgency measure, and I was pretty much stunned. I have to say that I feel we are sacrificing deeply held principles and long-standing practice in the name of short-term approaches that I don't think that A, probably will not work, B, have not been fully considered, C, risk harm to innocent bystanders, and I'm not even sure are needed. Also, moreover, I'm concerned that this interrupts the work that we're trying to do on the council about reporting of force more generally. There's an item on later tonight that talks about that, and I feel that the tendency to bring this up in the same meeting where we're going to be discussing another reform of the police department is concerning to me. This does not get to who I think is right or wrong in the groups and the, Nazis versus left wing. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in how we approach our citizens, our people on an everyday basis. There is no bureaucratic solution or technical tool that's going to get us out of the situation we're in. We are in a very scary time because of the election of Donald Trump and because of the reactions of others to that election and to other things that are happening economically and politically. This, I believe, represents escalation and not the de-escalation that we need. And it's part of a cycle for me where when we came together on July 27th, we were told, please let us have this idea of a perimeter where we will then take weapons when people try to come to the park. And that didn't really happen. So I feel like this may not really work and we'll be asked to do something else. I just want to point out, this is the work product of the 1997 task force on pepper spray. This is what you presented to us today. There is no doubt in my mind that the analysis in here about some of the impacts of pepper spray are still valid. That doesn't mean that I don't think there might be a time and place for its use. I just don't understand why we have to go to these bigger canisters. You're really asking for two things. You're not just asking to use it in a crowd situation, and I trust you completely. You're not trying to use it for crowd control, but you're not just asking to use it in a crowd situation, you are asking for bigger weapons. And I think that's the piece we really haven't talked about enough, and I'm very concerned about that. So I'd like to separate those two issues. One is, how do you deal with violent people that emerge from a crowd? You're not trying to do crowd control, you're trying to deal with those violent individuals. That's question one. And then question two is the larger amount of pepper spray necessary? I am always wary of escalation. Also, the language...
Sir, you're out of order, please.
I'm really concerned about the language used in requesting this item, the language of violent extremism, because it crosses over from the land of criminal justice enforcement, a world that I work in every single day, and into politics. And I don't think we want to do that. I don't think you even meant that. But what I'm trying to make sure is we're talking about the minimum amount of force needed by our department to deal with violent actions by individuals.
Correct.
Not to discuss groups, not to get involved in maybe even, from my point of view, holding the line. I think what is important is we're looking at violent activities from individuals. If you use the existing pepper spray you have in that situation, time would have to tell whether that was a reasonable response or not. And I'm not saying I would criticize you for doing that, because it may be the situation called for it. But I'm not convinced about the larger quantities. I also think that this rush to judgment at our first meeting after the summer break, with no public process and no consideration by the PRC is really ill-informed. We've known that Ben Shapiro is coming for a while. He didn't announce this on Friday. We've known about that. There are events also at the end of the month. I would ask for a minimum that we extend this item for at least 2 weeks so we have more time to consider the impact and get more information from you before the events at the end of September. I also want to just say that personally, I'm more frightened by the loss of our civil liberties and possible injury to innocent bystanders than I am by the limited violence that has taken place so far. I think your department did a fantastic job on August 27th, and you did it without more pepper spray. You actually managed to emerge from that day with very few injuries and 13 arrests. You can, as I said before, use pepper spray against individuals as needed already. I think also, I just want to say, we're living in this time, so we look at this and say, oh my God, it's so violent. We're not living in a uniquely violent time. In the 60s, there were 1,000 bombings a year. And we managed, after that period, to come out of that and say, how do we want to deal with this? Do we want to escalate or do we want to de-escalate? We need to use Boston as an example. We don't know how that would have happened if people would have come out if there had been pepper spray. I don't think the citizens of Boston would have shown up because they would have been scared for themselves. And that's sort of my beacon, is what happened in Boston. So I'm not willing to give up on that vision. I'm not willing to give up on our longstanding policy, and I really would encourage you to think about delaying this for a couple of weeks until we have a chance to consider this evidence in more depth. Thank you.
So before I recognize Councilor Bartlett, I just want to briefly respond to a few points that Councilor Harrison made. I actually was there. I was in Berkeley when August 27th happened. I observed the situation. We, based on the rule that the ordinance, the urgency ordinance the council adopted, and the rules that were promulgated by the city manager, weapons were confiscated. People were searched, weapons were confiscated. So that did happen. So that strategy was implemented. What we saw, and I completely agree with everything that's been said, that the vast majority of people that were demonstrating on that day, including myself, were peaceful. But there were a few small number of people that did have weapons, that stormed into the park, and that did commit violence against people. That is a reality. And so as the mayor of Berkeley and as a leader of this city, I take public safety as a top priority, balancing public safety and protecting people's constitutional rights. And that is what our police are doing every single day, defending the rights of people to speak out regardless of their political opinion and protecting our safety. We have an obligation to keep the people that are keeping us safe, and to keep our community safe as well. That's why I'm voting for this proposal today. Councilor Bartlett, did you wish to speak?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for the chief here. Regarding the last incident, there's a 72-hour window for an action item report, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I missed that. Did we see that yet?
No, I've given an extension to it because the person who's writing it, a couple of reasons. The person who's writing it worked, I want to say, 9 days straight and about 30 hours straight into the event. And so I provided for an extension for it being due until that commander returned from his days off and getting some rest. That timing issue is a problem when we're facing demonstrations of this size and scale. Secondarily, we're working to establish a format of an after-action report that we can use every time, because we have not released after-action reports in the past. And I'm trying to find that format so that we can do it the same way every time, and I'm using this as an example. Unfortunately, because of a variety of factors, I haven't had the time to work on that project. Our goal is to establish a format for a standard after-action report that gets produced within 72 hours of the commander returning from days off, if that's needed, and to issue that after-action report in that fashion.
Okay, thank you. And also, I know last term we did complete the funding for the body cameras. I wonder if there's a plan for implementation.
So I believe we have I want to say mid to late October. Mid to late October is our next phase, and I we have not been able to look at that, so I apologize for not having a date. I believe we have the equipment. We're working on infrastructure and moving forward with that. And again, these events, all of these events, have been such that it takes away time. So the lieutenant who's working on the body-worn camera project is fully engaged with working on these demonstrations as well as being a watch commander lieutenant. So the scope and scale of these demonstrations happening in our town are unique and unprecedented, and they take the full capacity of our department to address at the expense of other work that we'd like to be doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I ask because it's it's imperative to have all the information as we make the decisions, because we are, without a doubt, in very perilous times. The Trump administration is representing so much divisive energy that it's manifesting everywhere, and we all know the deal. I thank you personally, those who stood for us and protected us against bad people. I've been at all 4 or 5 of these events, and it's very harrowing. And I want to say for the record that yes, we are the home of free speech, but we are also the home of social justice. And when they talk about free speech, what they're saying is, if you walk around, listen to them, they had debates. Every instance of free speech they're talking about was directed at some ethnic group or some minority, about Muslims, about Mexicans, about blacks, about Jews, about LGBT. It was a very, very negative exploration of free speech that they brought here, and it was really traumatizing. And as we go forward, as we determine how best to kind of, course correct in our country, and Berkeley is the fulcrum at this point right now. I say it again, and this is having grown up here, and then the movement and everything. Violence, literally, they have 1,001 techniques to deal with violence. They have nothing that can deal with smartness and compassion and nonviolence and creativity. They can't even touch that. But I'm wondering, what has anyone thought through what happens when an infiltrator puts on a black mask and does something horrible? We all get derailed then. That's what they did in the 60s and the 70s. They derailed us like that. That's COINTELPRO. We got to tap our institutional memory here, and we got to not fall prey to the trap of violence, because I'm telling you, we don't win that game. We don't win it. So, I support the mayor's proposition as narrowly tailored as possible, as you have recrafted it, and in the spirit of preserving our freedom and not falling into the trap that is obviously set for us. I'm going to support the proposal.
Councilmember Davlin. Recognize, please. Please.
Most of the questions that I had were answered. All the questions that I had were answered. But I just want to state that I felt like what the police did on all the last incidences of these protests was fine. That didn't escalate the violence. It didn't go the way you may have thought it might have gone. So I don't quite understand why this is all necessary. But I also want to say that violence promotes violence, either whether it's on the police side or if it's on the civilian side. So peace is the answer. Have love in your heart and just move forward in that direction.
Thank you. Councilmember Hahn.
Thank you. Well, I agree with Councilmember Harrison about using terms to characterize people, and I actually regret that the report labels people. There's only one distinction that we are actually talking about here today, and it has nothing to do with what is in someone's mind or heart. It has to do with what they do. Are they violent or are they not? And I think that we have, it's been a distraction to talk about other things, because that is actually what we're here to talk about today. We're only here to talk about what tools our police might have in a very specific violent incident. I am not only concerned about violence towards our police. I understand that may have been sort of part of the thinking in this, but I'm actually very concerned against about violence against individuals. And so I think that we need to think about that as well, and we need to talk about that, because it's completely unacceptable to me that anybody in our community has been struck or beaten, whether they have a uniform on or not. And quite frankly, I don't think a lot of people stop to ask each person who was a victim of violence at any of our protests in the last few months what they really thought. I think that people are making snap judgments based on clothing in a lot of different directions, and it just is not a very productive exercise for us to be throwing people into categories. So I am sorry that that was in the report, and I'm sorry that that ends up being a big part of our discussion. I'm interested in the question of violence, no matter who is perpetrating it. Regarding this, I think also it was a mistake to suggest that we would be repealing our prohibition on the use of pepper spray for crowd control. That is actually restated in the proposal that is on the table right now from the mayor. The prohibition on the use of pepper spray for crowd control is clearly restated. It stands. It's actually passed again by another city council, by what is moved here. I looked up the actual council action in 97, and it reads as follows. First of all, it was from Councilmember Spring. It was seconded by Councilmember Milo. It recommended that the council approve a policy that every time pepper spray is used by the police department, there would be a report. So clearly the use was being enabled by that council action. Seals were being placed on the triggers. I assume we're doing that. That's what it says. And then it says no pepper spray will be used as crowd control. And then there are a couple of other things. So this council in 97 did not say we will never use pepper spray in Berkeley. They said we can use it as long as there was a report and a seal on the trigger. And I assume that was so that we would know that it had been used, so that we knew that a report had to be written. And that it couldn't be used for crowd control. So what we are doing here is to restate pretty much the same thing. It shall not be used as a crowd control technique to disperse a crowd or move a crowd. And I do think, Chief, that really needs to be reiterated, because I think there probably are techniques for using it for crowd control, and that's not what we're talking about here. So then what we are doing is we are essentially saying that pepper spray is already used in our community in certain violent circumstances. And if that kind of violence happens to occur in a crowd, it can be used in the same way. So in some sense, we are doing very little here. We're not repealing the ban on using it for crowd control. We're actually restating it. And I'd like to say for myself, loudly and affirmatively, restating it. Then we are saying, if you encounter a specific violent incident or act, whether it's directed towards you or a police officer or a civilian, that you can use pepper spray the way you are using it already in the community. I also think that you should use the same restraint. Clearly, you're carrying this with you all the time, and you're using it like 3 times a year. I assume I can go and verify that. So the fact that you might have it with you and be authorized to use it against a specific violent act that happens to take place in a crowd does not mean that you should use it. So I assume that you would use the same restraint. Those are my comments, and I will be supporting the motion. I think that
Please.
What is being done here is not as big as what people think.
Please. We had public comment. It's now time for council to discuss. Councilor Hahn, you still have the floor? Okay.
Thank you. I'm finished.
Councilor Davila, you recognize.
Yes, I would just like to request that we expedite the implementation of the body cameras, because that will be the way that we know that you're doing what you say you're doing when. And also expedite the action reports, because we need to know what they say. And I'd also like to see the action report from the June 20th meeting.
Thank you. Councilor Milo, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm really sorry I couldn't be here for the whole meeting, but I am glad that I got here for this portion. I think it's really important for us to keep our eye on the ball. It's no surprise to anybody, based on what's happened the last few months, that people are going to come here who are challenging us, who intend to be violent in coordinated ways, and in some ways that we actually can't even anticipate. It could happen in any particular way, and we're putting all of our best forward to cope with this. Interestingly enough, to protect free speech, and I'm sure that the people who are provoking us are laughing about that, that we are standing up for something that they're using against us. And so to actually prepare as well as we can to deal with this level of violence on the part of individuals who will come with clubs loaded with lead inside of them so that they can have the most lethal effect on people, who will have weapons that we, as I said before, we can't even anticipate. So this additional tool, modest as it is really what the police are asking for. And as a person who was elected to represent my district, my highest call to service is protection of public safety. And that means the public, and that includes the police as well. So having this before us now, and it's before us because we're experiencing this now. It's not that we experienced it last year. This is a new phenomenon that's happening and evolving. Yes. And we really don't know what to expect. So we're taking a modest step forward here to give another tool to the police for individuals engaged in violence against a kind of a phalanx of people who are approaching with malintent. So I applaud the careful crafting of this. I know you put a lot of work into this, Mayor Arreguín, and worked with key people here in order to make sure it was very carefully done. So I intend to support the measure, and I'd like to call the question.
Thank you. So our policy on calling the question is that everyone that's in the speaker's queue gets to speak, and then we vote. So Councilmember Harrison, and then Davila, and then we'll vote.
I want to thank Councilmember Hahn very briefly for her comments. I think it's true we are not doing a big thing, but I also think it's true we're doing something we don't need to do. So that's the distinction that I draw, and I'm hopeful that we will not see increased violence result from this. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davila, you're recognized.
I just also wanted to state that I just wanted to ask the question, were any of the alt-right arrested in any of these? Were the neo-Nazis arrested in any of these protests currently?
Yes.
Over the course, you know the numbers maybe? I mean, over the course of these demonstrations, we've arrested people on, I'll say, both sides, because the dynamic of this conversation tends to do that. Kyle Chapman, in fact, who is known, I guess, from the alt-right, is arrested. We have a significant investigation against him. I don't know if you have more to add on that.
There were several arrests from the alt-right. In fact, the only 2 felony prosecutions were from the alt-right for carrying billy clubs, for carrying sticks, and axe handles as clubs.
Thank you.
Okay.
And also, I just feel like the
Sir, you're out of order.
fear, we're just like continuing the fear ideology of, the Trump administration, also the Bush administration. It just doesn't seem right. And it also, I also have a problem with people talking, the word extremist, because who were the, people in the park that were there peacefully were not extremists. And I don't know, it seems like they're all being put into the same category. That's problematic. And coordinated ways, all the peacemakers, yes, we're coordinated. If we're in peace, we have to be coordinated. We have to be strategic. And if that's, I don't understand why that keeps getting put in a negative context. Because if we have to be united. United means that we have to be strategic. That means that we have to talk to each other and we have to communicate. I don't find a problem with peaceful people being in allegiance and an alliance with each other, no matter where, I don't understand what the problem with that is. And that I find it very problematic that keeps coming up.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes debate on the motion, which I read. Let's call the roll.
Councilmember Milo?
Yes.
Davila?
No.
Bartlett?
Yes.
Harrison?
No.
Hahn?
Yes.
Wengraf?
Yes.
Worthington?
No.
Drosty?
Yes.
Mayor Arreguín?
Yes.
6 yes.
Okay, motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Moved in second. Any objection? We're adjourned.